Chuck, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
we are doing another in Aaron's office recording, so thanks for joining us on the couch. Now, just to kind of start out, I find your story interesting because you didn't even come from auto repair. How did you get into this business?
I'd had some other small businesses. I had worked in corporate America, and the corporate America thing kind of played itself out, and I decided I just wanted to have my own business.
Yeah,
And I had a CrossFit gym when we lived in Texas, right when I left my previous company. I don't know if you want me to say that name or whatever, but
yeah,
I was working for a company called James Hardy there. So worked for him in Virginia, South Carolina.
Siding company?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, on the manufacturing side.
Okay.
So from there, I went to Australia with them. Lived in Australia working for James Hardy from 2009 to 11.
oh, wow.
And the deal was when I came back, I was the HR guy for Asia Pac, so I covered Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, and they would have an equivalent job for me when I came back to the States. The equivalent job was process engineer, not HR.
Changed it a little bit.
I was overpaid and underqualified for, but so ultimately we went our separate ways. Initially, I was looking at another HR job. I was interviewing for a VP of HR for another small company in the DFW area, which is where we've been relocated to, coming back from Oz, and started doing personal training. And while I was in Australia, I'd gotten into this thing called CrossFit and gotten very fit and started coaching other people. I got multiple certifications. And any long story short, my wife's like, well, you've always wanted to have your own business. Now's the time. Either do it or shut up about it.
Yeah,
So we started a CrossFit gym in the garage of the house in Texas.
Wow.
Moved forward a few years, and my oldest, I told you we got 4 kids. The oldest adopted one. I was getting married. My parents were there, and I found out that my dad had like his blood cancer. My wife's like, it's just time for us to move back home, which is Virginia.
yeah,
So sold the gym, moved back, was looking for another business to buy, something else to have as my own business. Ended up working in HR for a bit because it just made sense, and
Yeah.
my resume led me there to keep making some money while we were looking for a business. Looked at all kinds of different things, and again, like I said, it was 2016, quite honestly, expecting Hillary to be the next president, and probably looking at a bit of a downturn in the economy as a result. And found this automotive repair shop. I felt like it would be reasonably recession resistant.
yeah. Now, were you looking for something, or how did you
Yeah,
find out
I
about it?
had talked to my accountant. It's a small town, and he's kind of a guy who's got his fingers in a lot of things.
Yeah,
And I told him I was interested in trying to find another business to buy. And he had presented a few things. There was like a Subway franchise was one of the examples, and this automotive repair shop came up. And
how did he sell you on it, or what did you when you first saw it?
he said, I think you could be. This might be a good opportunity for you, Chuck. The numbers are pretty strong. He'd been doing the taxes for him, so.
Okay,
They had, I think the last 3 years they did like 1.1, 1.15, and 1.25, something to that effect, in sales. And I thought, well, I should be able to do something like that and make with enough net, cover the debt, and make a living. My intent was always to have it, not to have an exit strategy. My exit strategy was no exit. Get somebody else to run the place and let it, have a little bit of money that came off. I was figuring, if I could make 10 grand a month,
Yeah.
maybe 100 grand a year, that and having somebody else run it, that would be a good thing.
yeah,
I think that when you probably started investigating that and pursuing it, I would assume you had no idea what you were getting into.
Yes, that is, you are completely correct.
That
And I
is-
think there might have been a little collusion between the accountant and the guy selling the business as well.
in a bad way, maybe.
In a bad way for me, in a good way for him.
So tell us about that. You bought it. Are you saying you felt like you overpaid?
Oh yeah, certainly overpaid.
Can you? I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but can you give us some ideas in case someone else right now is, looking at buying a business? What is it? What were the red flags you missed, but now make total sense looking back?
When I was trying to do due diligence, there was like, well, we don't try not to upset the guys in the shop. We don't really want you talking to them. And he told me things like, oh yeah, the average, I think the lowest tenured guy there has been there 5 years. Not true. None of this stuff was true. And I knew the guy enough. I knew of him because it's a small town that I knew better than trust him. But I trusted his tax returns. I think if he's going to cheat on the tax returns, he's going to cheat on the low end on revenue, not in net, not on the high end.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing about 18% net. No, that might have been a little less than 15% net, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But he ran a very different model. He would. It wasn't necessarily a reputable business.
Okay.
My first several months, I was replacing parts that he had told people he had replaced.
Oh
that they
man.
hadn't,
Oh wow.
He had done a number of things, and I was talking earlier.
Yeah.
He'd had another shop before years ago that he had sold to a different accountant, and then within 6 months he bought it back at like 40 cents on the dollar. So I think he had this as his strategy when he was selling it to me as well.
You think he was going to sell it to you, let you take it, buy it back from you?
Correct.
Interesting.
So knowing
That's crazy.
those things, what would you tell us? I mean, how do you find that out during the discovery process?
Don't be afraid to dig into the due diligence. Let's look at some of the numbers better. And I mean, in those days, I didn't know what the numbers should be in an automotive shop.
Yeah.
I've gone and looked at other shops since then as we're trying to grow, and have had much more success. You also get things like, there's going to be some things that just don't show up here because these cash transactions or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
Just trust us that there's more money than you're seeing. It's like, no, I think
There actually wasn't.
No.
There wasn't any
Anytime
more
somebody
money.
says trust us,
There's always
Yeah.
less money.
Yeah.
So you think that accountant got a kickback?
He was paid for the transaction occurring in the sale. So
So that's
whether it's a
kickback.
kickback or it was a commission for having sold the business. And there were some things like early on, he's like, he might ask you to do things that just they don't make sense to you, Chuck, but you need to listen to what he's saying because he's been in this business a long time. And I remember one of our tire vendors, he's like, listen, you got to tell this guy this, this, and this, which was just was not nice, just being mean to people, right? And I did what he said, and then like a couple days later, I get an email, like a nasty email from the accountant who had brokered this deal about you can't be treating people like that. Tires is 10% of your business, and that's $100,000 of business you're jeopardizing by talking to this guy like this. And I was like, I did exactly what you told me to do. Like he was just like basically trying to beat up verbally like one of our suppliers and had me doing it.
it's a little weird that the
And then he goes to the accountant and
Yeah.
tells him I've done this, and the accountant chews my butt for it.
yeah, it all kind of came full circle through
And
the accountants.
That was the moment when I said, okay, the two of them are in this together. And I found a new account because he was still my accountant.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want him in our books at all.
So you got a new accountant.
Yes, I went through a few actually.
So you found a good one.
Right now we're using Parmelis, and Hunt and I get along very, very well. We talk about the numbers, and I think I have a good one. We had.
But it took you some time.
It took some time, and it took a lot of time of us just pulling it in house. We still do the bookkeeping.
Yeah, yeah. So, were there any more run-ins with the old shop owner or with the accountant once you got past that decision?
Yes, and I was told this story earlier, but the old shop owner was still there. So the agreement was the first month So December he would be there 5 days a week, and then the second month, January, he'd be there Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then by February he'd be there Tuesdays and Thursdays just to help me understand the business, etc. We were 7 weeks in. He tried to get in a fist fight with the one technician that was worth anything at the shop. They called him a effing parts hanger, and they literally were. I got between them to keep him from going and getting into a fight.
Oh my gosh.
And
Sounds like
and
a great
and
business.
he-
7 weeks in.
yeah, and he just told me basically I was an idiot and that he couldn't. There was no way, even if he had 10 years, he couldn't show me how to run this business, etc. So I used that. I said, "Hey, Gary, I know you have said, even if you had 10 years, you couldn't teach me how to run this business. I think you're right, and I need to figure it out on my own. You don't need to show up anymore." And so that day that he tried to get in that fight, all that went down. He said, "Well, it's in writing in our agreement that I have to be here. So if we're going to change that, we should put it in writing." I said, "No problem." I went upstairs, wrote something, said, "If I need you, I will call you, and I'll pay you by the hour." And that's the last he's been in the shop. Well, except for to come in and try to take a bunch of stuff out. His son was working for me, which was weird. And he came in on a Wednesday evening, and we had an agreement. He had pictures and stuff that were his personal photos of him in the lobby.
Okay.
And said, "Those are yours. That's no problem. We'll just pick a weekend, and you can get them." He comes on a Wednesday night and takes all of them. So I've got all these little white squares because the walls were covered with dust except for where the pictures
Yep.
used to be. And I called my wife and I said, "Babe," I said, "I'm going to be late tonight." She said, "What is it?" I said, "I got to paint the office." And I said, "I can't open up looking like this tomorrow morning." And great woman, I've been blessed. She came, we got paint, and the two of us painted the lobby that night. So
Wow. So, and that guy, you haven't seen him since.
he did some weird stuff. He was sending his son to pick up the rent, right, every month for the first several months. So I'd have the check ready. I'd have it in the envelope.
Oh, so
waiting.
he owned the building too.
He still owns the building.
Oh,
Yes.
that
Still owns the building.
sucks.
So his son, he would send his son to pick up the rent, and I'd have the check waiting for him. And then he didn't send his son, and he just calls me and said, "Hey, you're late. That's 10% because you're late." I said, "Okay."
Wow.
So then I started mailing it to him, but I'd send it certified mail, which was in our agreement, right? And but he had to drive 12 miles to go pick up his certified mail, which pissed him off.
This
And
is
I
so
said,
funny.
"Gary, I have offered to do ACH. I just, I literally don't want to have to talk to you." He, I blacktopped the drive, right, because it needed it. And he threatened to take me to court over blacktopping the drive.
Because,
He didn't tell me I could blacktop the drive.
okay.
And I said, "Well, I'm happy to stand in front of a judge and explain how I made your property better, but if you want to do that, let's do it." And that was the kind of conversations we've had. And so I finally got him on ACH, got him out of my hair, and I've spoken to him recently. His son, who was a technician for me for a period of time, was in a motorcycle accident and lost a foot. And I, sent him a note about that. And then recently, we've just changed banks, so I had to get a new ACH to go through for paying our rent.
Yeah.
Bet that was fun.
Well, I'm curious. So take me back. Paint the lobby. Got all these pictures missing. You're figuring it out. He's gone.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like that first day when he was gone, and now it's on you to figure it out? When you walked in that door that morning, did you have somewhere you immediately wanted to start, or from there on, what did you start doing?
That's a great question. I was an HR guy, right? So we covered that. Spent 20 some
I
years.
do want to know how HR what did you learn from HR that maybe you brought over?
I will say that has been my greatest advantage. If I was if I had been a mechanic, I guarantee I'd be that guy that was fixing cars instead of running the business. If I'd been a service advisor, I would have been that guy at the front desk selling service. But I was neither, and I was terrible at sales. the advisor that I had at the time was an alcoholic. She would sneak out at lunch and drink. It was bad. So I knew I needed to get people,
Yeah.
and I gotten an advisor and found him on Indeed and got him. Actually, we were somehow kind of related. His
A little nepotism. Just
yeah,
slight.
but it's sort of like
Yeah.
my mother-in-law was married to his uncle, her second.
Your cousins twice
Right.
removed.
Well, it's a small town, you know.
Tennessee, that's far
everybody's
enough.
in
That's far
in
enough.
Tennessee, it's clear for a wedding.
That's right.
So it was getting people and I because I've had some of the abilities and experience in that area about attracting, retaining, and training talent. That's my superpower.
Mm.
That's what's helped me have a good business because I couldn't do any of it myself.
So you walked in and you immediately said, I need to start leveraging what I know,
Yeah.
find some good people.
Yeah. Well, I had several that I just needed to fire, but I couldn't.
Why couldn't you?
Because I didn't have anybody else.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
You know, and like the alcoholic at the front desk, probably a good place to start. You know, she'd go out and have a few vodkas at lunch. It was awful. But I got a good guy at the front. Unfortunately, he's not with me any longer. Just last year, into 2022, we had to part ways. But he was a huge step in the right direction and helped me get the business running in a better way. And attracting talent was harder than I expected it to be because you had the spouses.
Excuse me.
Spouses
I'll edit
didn't know
that
that,
out.
you know, that if I was going to be able to make it. It's like, well, Chuck can't fix a car.
We'll say that again. What did you say about your spouse?
The spouses of technicians. So I was like, I'd take techs out for beers, whatever I could do to get these guys. I had them over to the house. I was recruiting, and I was recruiting hard to get some decent techs. The guys that I had, like I said, one was the son of the previous owner. One was like had been, I don't know what they actually call it, where a guy that dismantles stuff at a junkyard.
Dismantler.
Yeah, so that's
That guy.
that guy who had been being paid under the table. I had a guy that had the university. I'm right next to Virginia Tech. The university had their own shop to repair stuff, and their guys were just so inefficient, ineffective. Lazy is not the word I wanted to use, but I think that's the right word.
Yeah.
That they basically shut it down because they were outsourcing everything anyway. The guys just weren't getting anything done. So they had this guy that was one of those. He was being paid like $12 an hour, hourly. And then I have one technician that was I'd say a B tech. He was really good with like AC, but he was the only one that was like a technician. And that's the one Gary tried to get in a fist fight with, and run him off.
So you buy it doing about $1.1 million, $1.2 million. What's that first year revenue like?
967.
You took it backwards.
Bro, it was
All that stress.
it was already heading that direction, but I didn't have 2016's numbers, right? When that was
That's
the
true.
latest numbers I had was 2015.
Yep.
So it was already, he was tanking it and running off customers, running off employees, which goes back to he wanted it to tank. When
Yep.
I took it over.
And did he give it a different name when you bought it, or you inherited the same name?
I took the name, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I don't think he'd ever filed for it as a
The DBA.
yeah, or the actual name with the town and all that sort of stuff. Where it's not the DBA part. I can't remember.
Trademarked it.
Trademark it or whatever. Yeah. So yes, I did all that, and like he was the kind of guy like if they want to see me, they can show up here or they can call me. There was no website. Of course, there was a presence on like Facebook, but he'd never taken ownership of it.
Mm-hmm.
So he had some bad reviews out there, that kind of stuff. But just what was already there from people having shown up, checking in, but not him ever owning it or responding to anything.
What'd you do the next year?
Next year I did 129, which was better than he'd ever done. That was big to me.
And walk us through all the years subsequently until
So
today.
so that was 17 967, 18 1.29, 19 1.4, 2020 we did 1.5, almost 1.6. The goal was 1.6. We ended up closing for 2 weeks in December. I think it's 1.59. We would have hit the 1.6. During that 2 weeks in December, my dad had become, I'd hired my dad as like the porter, shop helper. My dad was a retired truck driver, and this was one of the really good things that happened out of having the shop, was that he and I got to rebuild a relationship that had been strained. His work ethic was phenomenal, so all the guys seeing this 70-some-year-old man in there fixing whatever was broke and hauling people around was good. And when we did a part about moving back, my grandmother had moved in with us, my mom's mom. On December 22nd, Dad died of COVID. It was real sudden. It was weird. And,
Sorry, man.
And then the next day, my grandmother died in my arms at my house. And so that December just jacked me up. 2021 was less than 2020. We did 1.5, but I was, I wasn't an effective leader. I wasn't really there a lot. I mean, I was physically there every day, but I just wasn't there for the team or there for the guys.
Well, it sounds like your dad was a kind of an instrumental figure. I mean, he really brought something to the culture.
Yeah, he was a good guy.
Yeah.
And he's one of those really gruff on the exterior, grouchy kind of old man, but like his love language was food. He would come in and cook for the guys all the time.
Oh, man.
In those days we had Saturdays, and every Saturday he would cook. He would cook probably for, it would be like 3 of us working, and he would cook for like 10.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, you need to eat more. You need to eat more.
That's
That was
awesome.
awesome, yeah. But so 2021, that summer, is when I joined ShopFix. John Sheesby helped me a bunch through this whole stuff with Dad. We like I said, finished that year at 1.5. From there, we did 2022 2.2. Last year 2.75. So
It's 2 500K year jumps back to back.
yeah,
Man.
and I go into the shop in the morning before they open. I leave before they open, and I work from the home office. So not only are we doing $1 million more a year than we used to, over that, I don't have to spend any time in the shop.
Yeah, totally different.
Totally different.
And you don't have to talk to the landlord.
I have to talk to the landlord.
You finally get him on
I'd like to buy the shop. I would like to buy the building, and I have a first right of refusal. I haven't, because of, and maybe sometimes we create problems in our heads that don't really exist.
Yeah.
But I think that if I approached him to sell it to me, that he would feel as if he has me by the short hairs and would try to take advantage of that situation, just because of the kind of person he is. So I have thought about some more, it sounds kind of devious, but having somebody else who he would not know is connected to me make an offer on it, so that I've exercised my first right of refusal.
It's interesting. But the question would be if he wants to sell.
Yeah, but I'd rather come from a third party that was interested in buying some commercial real estate versus him knowing it's me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially because you're being successful. It's kind of just changed things around. The plan didn't work the way he wanted it to.
No, it didn't. And that was part of the things that quite honestly fueled me. I was like, no, I will work my guts out
Yeah.
to keep you from winning.
Yeah.
No, it's just, and again, everything, the house, every vehicle, every tangible asset that I had ever earned up to that point in my life was tied up in that SBA loan. So I defaulted on that. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
a
my
lot,
wife
a
was
lot of
still
skin in
working.
the game.
Yeah, my wife was still working. She was doing well. She was making six figures, which, by the way, I've gotten her to be able to quit that in September of 22, and is working
That's
full
awesome.
time with the business.
Oh, congratulations.
Um, Aaron might remember I had a heart attack in 22.
Mm-hmm.
Was that 22?
You weren't supposed to come.
21. It was 21 when I had the heart attack.
Was it?
Yeah,
I do remember
It was the November.
I remember the date. I just remember, and they were like, "You don't need to come." And then somebody's like, "I think he's getting on a plane,"
I was trying to. They wouldn't let me.
and it was like this big drama. We were hearing it from other coaches and other members.
I was trying to.
Wow.
So yeah, that was November 21. I had that heart attack, and I've seen it in shop fix where guys had, and I wasn't this way. I mean, it wasn't like I was trying to keep things from my wife. She was helping with the books up until COVID. With her, she worked for like HCA, healthcare.
Oh yeah, they're all over here.
Yeah, well, they're massive. They're probably the biggest. Depending on the year, they're the biggest healthcare company in the
They're
world.
the biggest for-profit.
Yeah, and so she worked she'd gone from like a lab type job into an IT type role, and was working remotely but covering the whole country. Was making good money, but they during COVID she was doing 100-hour weeks. It was insane, and took a 10% pay cut to do it. So getting her to get out of that was a big deal. We're coming. I say our 6-hour drive between here and home is one that we have a lot of conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
and I tried to get her to quit, and she was like, I don't know. I said, we're going to be fine. It's going to be okay. And what's that? Get the insurance to them. There's always something. So we sat down. I got back home, and I said, well, let's do a vision board. So we go down and do the vision board thing, and I said, what do you see, right? And there's a lot of travel and all that stuff, and what do you see? She said, I think I need to keep working for HCA so we have the money to do this. I was like, that was the wrong thing. That's not what you're supposed to see. Time is what we needed, time together.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if something were to happen to me now, we all have an expiration date. It's going to happen. I'm not looking forward to having it anytime soon, but I know that she's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Her and our GM and that sort of stuff, and the community we have here.
Yeah.
I have no concerns that it'll be fine.
Well, I'm curious. Sounds like the transition of your shops, getting the people in place. But are there some other really motivational things that you've learned throughout that time that you think others might pick up on?
And we're actually going to do it tomorrow. That levels training, Dave and I. But when you went, Lowell went through this whole shop capacity thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an eye opener when you're like, okay, I'm doing this, but
You pick somebody out of the crowd randomly. They don't think they can. They think they've maxed out their building.
Yeah, and I've got in my tribe I've got guys got a 8-bay with like 3.5 techs, and he's like, well, I found one good guy, but I want to talk to somebody else. I said, why? You're backed up 2 weeks of work. Hire that guy and then hire the next one too.
Yeah.
You've got plenty of. You don't need 3 bays for one tech.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I just don't. And I get it. That literally was one of the biggest things for me was because I didn't know, and I had been convinced by technicians and even the previous owner that you need to have more bays than you have technicians for whatever reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not about looking at the business as what is. My job is to get the most throughput through this business. Get the most
Outrun overhead.
outrun overhead, but maximize the use of of the capital that's employed. So if I got a lift that's not being maximized because it's waiting for somebody to need it, that's a bad decision.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's good stuff. So, can you talk a little bit about the community? You said the community that we have here. What was that like for you and your wife coming into this and connecting with people and making friends? What was that before and after like?
Well, there's not an after, there's a during.
Before and during.
Before and during.
That's a better way to say
So
it.
before was I had other coaching companies that I had employed, and I was saying earlier that everybody has their own like dashboard. And I remember, so Dave O'Connell's my coach, and he, on the first call, he's like, well, you need to go ahead and do this sales tracker. And I was like, oh God, here I go with another guy's dashboard. It's not going to help me.
Yeah.
But that particular tool was very helpful to me. I would have, at one point I was basically paying for a guy that I would talk to every other week or once a month who would tell me, you need to improve your ARO. I'll talk to you next time. And that was it.
Oh, at your
Previous
old
coaching companies.
Okay.
And I was like, that's just not helping me. And then when I could see in the tracker, it's like, oh, okay, my problem is tech quote. Close ratio was fantastic. Close ratio was too good, like 90%. Right?
Yeah,
ARO was 250, but
I've seen that people are advertising 90% close ratio, and I'm like, bull butter. You go in
Right.
there, you dig into it, and you're like, this is
you're not giving them enough to say no to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a light bulb moment. Just like the capacity was a light bulb moment. It's just sometimes big things swing on small hinges, and you can make a tweak that changes a lot. Changes a lot.
So when you started making friends and connections, what were the differences that you started noticing from where you'd been previously to what you experienced once you got around these people?
Well, there really wasn't any comparison. The other stuff was how do I want to say it? I don't want to be ugly.
Yeah, don't say anything negative about anybody else, but
No.
I guess what I'm saying is, I don't even mean the other program. I mean peer to peer. What were the other members like in other programs versus the members in this?
I didn't really have a lot of interface with members of other programs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't. I hadn't.
So that's the big difference.
That was one of the big differences, right? And then you had these people that are so just open. I never had a problem with it. And I would talk to other shop owners in my community, but that was like the only one that would do that. And when I was a kid, the shop that my dad would take our vehicles to, that guy's still in business. His name's Don. And I go talk to Don. I say, well, how are you doing? Blah blah blah. And he's like, well, I'd say, man, you need to do the. I was coaching Don, and he's
Yeah.
he's like, I've never had another business owner, much less shop owner, talk to me like this. And I was like, I said, there's plenty of honest work for all of us. I'm not here to try to. I don't make my business better by making yours worse. I make mine better by making yours better.
I love what you just said. There's plenty of honest work for all of us.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
People need to be taken care of, and I think we can. I moved around a lot with corporate jobs in the military and that sort of stuff, and finding a place that you could know, like, and trust was a big deal. And I knew when I had my own place, it was going to be that place. There's just too much honest work and trying to screw people, and I think in this industry we do get bad because there are bad players. And I bought a shop from one.
Did it
So
take you a while to overcome that reputation?
It was actually quicker than I would have thought.
Okay.
And I mean, we were having to early on. It's like, all right, guys, everybody park your car up front because it looks like we're closed.
Pop the hood, Johnny.
Yeah, and nobody. It's just I think a shop like a restaurant. Nobody wants to go to one that's not busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're in an unfamiliar town and you go by a restaurant and it is empty, you're like, I'm not going there for lunch.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm waiting for that place. The parking lot's pretty full, and the same thing with the shop. So moving to get the guys to park up front was one of those things we did early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and just getting good techs, being honest, and I had to eat a lot. I said 967 was about break even. It probably wasn't break even, except that I was paying so much of the stuff that the last guy had done. Right, I wasn't going to tell them, well, no, that was Gary, and this is not my problem. I was just going to fix it. And
You just took ownership and ran.
yeah, and I think that more than anything is really the reputation repair.
Mm-hmm.
Just make it right,
Well,
and let the guys see it.
You took a bad shop off the market, so that's
I
good.
did. Yeah. But yeah, definitely overpaid. It probably was worth. Now I know what it was. Probably worth 6 at the top end.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was in there every day. He didn't have a way of getting that multiple up where he's at home like I am.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
probably actually a good thing to evaluate. How often is that owner in that shop? Will tell you a lot about the problems they might be having. You're just
Yeah.
having to be in there every day.
Oh yeah, we even tried to talk to
Or
him
the kind of
during a
ego he's
weekday.
running.
He's like, well, I can't be away. He couldn't be away for a few hours without being nervous about what was going on.
Oh wow.
But he also had poor quality personnel
Yeah.
because they were cheap.
So it says a lot.
Had to hold everybody's hands.
Yeah, and he could sell. That was he had come into ownership from being an advisor, and that guy could sell. And I can tell you today he could sell. He could sell, Eskimos, whatever, ice cream to Eskimos or whatever. He could sell. He would tell me, watch this, and he'd do a I don't know, $5,000 or $6,000 engine job, get half of it right then. It's like
He's like, watch this.
literally. I mean, so that was his core competence, was his ability to sell up front.
And it sounds like he was confident.
Oh yeah. Well, and I guess sometimes I might have been a part of the losing end of that capacity, right? I can't sell anything, but they sold me on that this was going to be worth.
But you surprised them with your leadership and your resolve, and you turned it around and did something they've never been able to do.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They would not believe it if they saw your numbers today.
And I don't want him to know what they are, right? Because I know he would take advantage of that.
And I'm assuming you've got a long lease in this building.
So initial lease was 10 years, and when we were going through the negotiations, I said I want a second 10 years because I didn't trust him, and I thought, well, it's going to take me 10 years to pay off the 2 loans that I have, the $1 million I got, and if he just jacks up my rent all of a sudden at the end of that 10 years, so I got a second 10 years in writing. That will start in 2 years.
Okay.
Or 8 years in now.
Awesome.
Well, I'm curious about your team, the people you've hired that are doing things. Tell us about your team, your culture. What are things that are really important for you guys?
Of course, culture is a big deal for me, and that was also one of the things that I worked on when I was an HR guy. That's the reason they sent me to Asia Pac, was to change the culture. So culture, I don't know, culture is what anybody can have a lift, anybody can have equipment.
Yeah.
The difference between my business and your business is the people in it and how they behave, how they take care of our guests, how they're honest. I'm going to have that shop that you can know, like, and trust. And yeah, I've not only, we had a technician once that I'd hired, and the other techs had suspected he might be taking their tools. And I got him on film. I didn't just fire him. I called the cops in and then made a public spectacle of letting him go and having the cops walk him out.
Wow.
So, but that also is an important piece of culture. They got to know that certain things are just not tolerated.
Well, and you're also defending the people that are.
Yeah, the rest
They're
of
like,
the team.
he's got our back.
The rest
He's
of
not
the
going to
team.
he's not going to let this slide.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, I'm curious. You said being honest. It's one thing to say you want your employees, your techs, when they mess up, to be honest. Practically, how does that play out? How do you teach them to be honest? To say, hey, we're going to run a good shop.
Sometimes, a lot of times it's hard. It's easy to do when it's easy,
For sure.
right? It's harder to do when it's hard. So like the technician that has screwed up, stepped on a crank, I do it, right? And I try to model it. It's like, hey, I screwed this up, guys, and just own it. We're going to be okay. Technicians, when they screw something up, it's real easy to be angry about it. But if they screwed it up and they came and told you, you got to immediately tell them how much you appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay.
We can fix it. It's okay. We just need to know. If you're trying to hide it, it's a problem, and it's a problem for the whole organization. I don't think you can do it well or do it right and not be honest. I don't know how you know, I don't have a good enough memory to tell a bunch of lies and then try to tell you what I
But
think.
there's people that
Yeah.
do
Well,
lie upon lie upon lie upon lie.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think
don't
it's
know how to do it.
it's really important. The I hear that from people when they're managing people to say, hey, I want you to be honest. Come to me, tell me. But your gut reaction when somebody tells you that might be, you're looking down the barrel of a bunch of other things going on in the business, and somebody text walks in and tells you that. You immediately have to check,
How do
dig
I
into
respond?
that culture and respond.
Oh,
That's a
gosh.
big deal.
Yeah. No, because it's like, hey man, I got some news for you. It's going to cost you about $7,000, right? Okay, let me take a breath here and let's talk about this.
Yep.
Yeah, it's okay. In the long run, it's still cheaper, right? That 7,000 or whatever, because it happens. I have fixed body stuff on cars that I know we did not do. I just know we didn't.
Yeah.
I've reviewed film to see if we did it. You know, we did not do it. But do I just send that customer out and say, sorry, we didn't do this, or do I just fix it?
Yeah.
It's going to cost me some money in the short run. In the long run, I'm playing the long game here. In the long run, it comes back in spades. You're going to win in the long run. You got to be capitalized enough to be able to, afford it.
Sure.
But in the long run, you just win if you're being honest.
I still think even in the short case, I mean, even when they capitalize it, there's still opportunities to play the long game in smaller instances, smaller places where it's going to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Communication is a critical thing. Whenever there's a lack of information, humans will fill it in with negative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that is. I just know that it is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't told somebody something in like 3 different ways, you haven't told them yet. So you can hand them a thing, you can tell them during the weekly meeting, and you can post it. Now you've told them once. But until you've done all of that, you haven't told them at all.
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know why people don't listen.
Well, people don't read emails either. That's why I draw stick figures, and everybody wonders why it works out so well.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Visually take in info. Stick figures do a good job.
They
Yeah,
do.
good
They do.
artwork.
And when you draw it as you go, and they're not pre-drawn, people are like, why don't you get this stuff pre-done and look professional? People actually aren't near as curious. When you're drawing it out, they're more in it. They're watching you. Everywhere that ink goes, like it just sucks them in from a learning perspective.
Yeah.
It's just different. So it sounds like you jumped into an industry, didn't know it, pulled off a big turnaround,
Yeah,
got
cool.
your wife out of the corporate world,
Yeah.
got things cranking. Now you're coaching.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Well, I hadn't been a coach before. I've been a CrossFit coach, so I've been a coach, and I love I've been called a lot of things, good or bad, you know.
We all have.
Over the years and the different hats you wear, but I think coach is one of my favorite titles.
Okay.
I love growing people. You know, I think there's no more. When I went back, we were back in Texas. Oh gosh, several months ago, and I ran into one of the guys who was one of the first guys that joined my CrossFit gym, and he's now running. He's 33 years old, running a $25 million a year business. He was a sales guy, and this is in plumbing supplies. He was a sales guy for a plumbing supply business when we were working out together. And he says, Chuck, I could have never done it without you. And I was like, that's not true. You know, one, that's not true. You did all this work. But it's nice to hear stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think I have a big ego, but I do. I have had multiple times over my life when people tell me that I have helped them or changed parts of their life, like the first African American elected official in our county wrote me a thank you letter. She said she would have never done it if it wasn't for me. This goes way back, but I was a union president once upon a time in a manufacturing plant, and she was in the union with me, and just getting that, it's like I had already moved away. You know, she didn't have to do things, and just it was. I don't know. There's something about. There's a value that you're adding. There's a thing that you're doing that's going beyond you. I said we all got an expiration date. You know, what's the stuff that outlives you? I think it's the stuff that you did to others.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
It's awesome that you're giving back. It's awesome that other people now get to benefit from your experience. If somebody tries to sell them a shop, you're gonna know what to look for.
Don't do it. Just don't. No, just kidding.
Kidding,
They'll be wiser. They'll be smarter
it is,
because of you.
it is absolutely. I mean, no, I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life. My brother-in-law, I don't know if you knew. So I took $1.055 million in debt to buy this shop.
Mm-hmm.
Shop was $900,000. There was $30,000 tacked on for something. I don't know what it was. And I wanted to have I had some closing costs, and I wanted to have $100,000 in the bank for operating capital.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that as debt. And I was saying that. So at age 51, I was a negative millionaire because everything was tied up in that. But I paid my brother-in-law, who was $425,000 of that debt, and had written me a letter saying that it was a gift, so that the SBA would finance this thing. Maybe you might need to cut that out so we don't hear him say
Yeah.
it. But I paid him off. I paid him off in 5 years, and the SBA's paid off. So I'm 8 years in, and I've paid all that off. You know.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah. And we're making great money, and we've got the time to enjoy it.
And that is the key.
Mic drop right there, brother. That's it.
Yeah.
It don't get any better than that.
Yeah, you gotta be able to go out in your convertible, cruise around, get in your RV, go fishing, go to the mountains, go skiing, go to the Bahamas, do whatever it is, but you gotta have time to go.
Yeah. And we're going to Europe next month.
Must be nice.
It is. It
Oh,
really
I love
is.
it, that line. It
It
is.
is. I have no, you know, and it is. That's one of the things you get with this community is the ability to share your wins with a group
They won't be jealous.
that appreciates the effort.
They're happy for you.
Yes.
They want to see you go. Because none of us want to hear that line, it must be nice.
No.
But man, what a great comeback. It is.
It is